I was in court the other day representing a client in a domestic violence situation. We were in the order of protection court. The judge called a case up there before ours, and the young man that was subject to the order of protection stood up, and the judge asked him what he wanted to do. And he said, "Well, I'll just go ahead and accept it." And he did, and the judge signed the order of protection. He was subject to it for a year. Here's the problem. There are a lot of implications to that people don't realize. Number one, it becomes a felony to possess a firearm or ammunition once you've been convicted of a misdemeanor or felony involving domestic violence, or if you are subject to an order of protection. It can also affect your employment. You can't be a police officer if you can't carry a gun. You also probably won't be able to get a job with the state or city government or big corporations because they check those things. So be careful before you submit to an order of protection. When people go through a divorce, they oftentimes agree on the settlement of their property. And usually that's called a property settlement agreement or a marital dissolution agreement or some other such term. But what it is essentially is a contract between you and your spouse on how you're going to divide things up. Who's going to get what property, who's going to pay what bills, who's going to pay alimony if alimony is implicated, things like that. And a lot of times people have remorse after they sign these things, buyer's remorse as we call it sometimes, where they'll agree to something one day, sign the paperwork, it'll get filed with the court, they'll wake up the next morning and think to themselves, what in the world did I just do? I signed away such and such, I signed away half my retirement, whatever it is, and they'll have remorse. Bad thing is, those are contracts. They're enforceable. When you sign a contract, you can't just get out of that contract. You're obligated to that. Unless there's some reason such as fraud or mutual mistake, you're not going to be able to get out of it. Hey, you got a child support case coming up? Well, guess what? There's certain things you're going to need to take to court with you to prove your income. And one of the most important things that you're going to need to take is your W-2 from last year. It's going to show what your income was for the previous year. And the court's going to use your gross income, not your net income, to determine child support. Sorry, you don't get to deduct things such as IRAs, 401ks, things like that. Now, the most important box on this form is box number 3. That's your total Social Security earnings. That's going to be your total earnings without regard to 401k contributions, things like that. That's probably what the court's going to use to determine your gross income. There's some other important documents. Your paycheck stub. It's going to show if there's any money coming out for health insurance for the children. And if there are, you may get credit for that on the child support worksheet. Another thing you may want to take is evidence of any work-related child care expenses. Those are the documents you need for child support. If you are serving your country in the United States military and you're going through a divorce, you probably know that you have an obligation to support your family and your spouse. It's usually called spousal support or family support in the military. Each branch of the service handles it a little bit differently, enforces it a little bit differently, and has different requirements as to the amount that you have to pay. But each branch of the service requires it. It's military law. If you don't do it, you can get in trouble. Here's the problem, though. The military will defer to state court orders on support. So if you get a state court order that provides that you pay less than what the military would have you pay, the military will defer to that order. I've seen cases where the spouses of service members to whom they are required to pay family support actually make more money than the service member. In those cases, it's imperative that you and your lawyer go to court and get an order that you don't have to provide that support. Otherwise, you're going to end up paying it.